In the last TT episode, we spent a good amount of time getting this car prepped for warmer weather. New windshield, headlight restoration, and of course, we've got our summer setup back on. In other words, before we do work today, we're all set to go have some fun in the car.
Actually, one thing we should probably take care of first.
Since this car is all-wheel drive, every single wheel has a CV axle. This guy right here. These are designed so they don't have a lot of lateral play. And our driver's side seems completely fine. I don't know if I could really say the same about the passenger side though, but I'll let you be the judge of that.
There shouldn't be that much play. We gotta fix that.
Now, before we do anything too fun to the TT today, we've got to address the front CV axle. This car's been clunking for quite a while now, and I haven't really been able to get a good video of the audio, specifically because we've been running the studded snow tires, which are far too loud. The gist is that that same noise that you heard when I was shaking, it happens under any sort of throttle. And if you paid attention, you can see that the inner grease was slung absolutely everywhere. In other words, it needs replacing. This is an aftermarket replacement axle, but it's not the final axle I want in the car. I'll explain that more in just a second. For now, let's talk about how to get this OEM axle out, and it's a lot simpler than you might think. Since we took out the center cap for our wheel and the car's on the ground, we can simply break the axle bolt loose, and then take off the wheel like normal. With the wheel off, we now have access to everything we're going to need to remove the axle. The first step I took was to remove the axle bolt. After this, I undid the top nut on the ball joint at the bottom of the spindle. I chose to undo the top one rather than the bottom three because I have aftermarket tubular control arms. And with those, if I undid the bottom, I'd need to get my car aligned again. So this was the faster option. And with it out of the way, I was able to pull back on the spindle and the axle came right out. Believe it or not, but that's all you need to do for this side of the axle. When doing the other side, I noticed something that changed my plan a bit though. The other side bolts to the front differential. There are 6 of these, and generally they're spline bolts. Mine, however, were Allen. In other words, what I was removing was hardware that was identical to the aftermarket axle that I was about to install, leading me to think that this car was already running aftermarket axles. The process for removing it, however, doesn't change. There are 6 of these bolts, and the best way I found to reach all of them is to jack the other side of the car up and spin the wheel. Since both sides are connected, you'll get access to the other bolts. So why is it worth noting that this car might already have aftermarket axles? Well, to be honest, aftermarket CV axles have a bit of a reputation for breaking, so OEM is generally the way to go. My initial plan was to have the OEM one rebuilt while I toss in an aftermarket one for the time being. Now, however, I'm gonna have to pivot a bit, since these are pretty much identical. I guess I'll just have to source an OEM one from scratch, and toss this one in for the time being. The cool thing about this one though, is it does have a lifetime warranty. So if it ever does break, I can just pull it off and get a different one. And the job is pretty easy, so that's not the end of the world. When looking at both of these side by side, you may have noticed something though, specifically on the inner end. The new axle has a cap on the end covering the joint itself. The one that I pulled from the car didn't have this. And the weirdest part is everywhere I looked online said that that cap was a critical part in actually installing the new axle. I didn't lose it or anything, and I definitely didn't leave it on the differential. Whoever installed this previously just simply didn't install that part. And maybe that's even part of the reason why it broke. Every single one I've seen online definitely doesn't look like this. Look at how much grease is everywhere. And there's no cap here that comes off, only adding to this mystery. Perhaps the early models are different. Maybe they don't even need that cap. It did, however, fit with it once I cleaned the surface up. So for now, that's what I'm gonna go with since it's what everyone else seems to be doing. If it for some reason doesn't work, I guess we'll come back to it and learn something together. This car is a 2002, so it's one of the earlier models, and maybe there is actually just a difference. Either way though, installation is pretty simple. I hand tightened all 6 of the bolts, and then went through and torqued them in a star pattern. And just like last time, to make reaching all the bolts easier, I jacked up the other side and rotated the tire a little bit. After a little bit of time, we were good to go. Got that side all torqued, now we're ready to go to the hub and see what that side's all about. The other side is just as simple. The axle bolt screws into the CV axle, so we need to remove this cap. Some people will say you should grease the splines, and some people will say you shouldn't. The instructions that came with my axle specifically say that you're not supposed to do it, and since this is the axle that's currently going on, we're gonna follow those. I also installed the bolt that came with the axle, which has a different type of head. This doesn't really change much, but you need to install new hardware when you do this since it's a stretch bolt. You've also got to torque it down twice, once in the air and once on the ground. I'll toss all the torque specs I found into the description. When we finished the final torque, we were good to go for the day. We were ready to test drive the car. One tiny issue though. I had somewhere to be, so we had to put a pause on the job for the day. And honestly, this isn't a bad spot to do that. My general rule of thumb when it comes to jobs with very specific torque sequences is to always double check them the following day with a fresh mind. It's always good to come back to a job with a fresh mindset, and in my opinion, it helps your work to be better. I'm running out of time today, so what I'm gonna do is leave the center cap off and come back tomorrow. There's one thing I still wanna do today, which is I wanna grab some hardware for the existing rocker panels because we're gonna go get some extended stuff at the hardware store tomorrow so that we can fit our custom side skirts that finally came in. I'm excited. I think we made some good progress today. I'm hoping to test it out tomorrow. I don't wanna rush finishing it up, so we're just gonna finish it tomorrow. Tis the next day. So first things first, I want to finish double checking all the torque for everything we did yesterday. It should be good to drive the car. We're going to test drive it with the center cap off in case we have to do anything else. Just to be preventative. Once that's done, we're gonna go grab some hardware for the new side skirts, which are finally in from Splitter Gang, and I'm super stoked. We haven't got the wing in yet, and I think the front lip and the side skirts may look a little goofy without a wing extension, so for the time being, we may reinstall our old broken one, just so we have something there. But Splitter Gang is working on the spoiler extension we designed, and it should be here sometime soon. So more on that in the future. But we're gonna get the side skirts on today and make sure everything test fits good and looks good, and I'm really excited. Oh yeah, that's awesome. It's just gone. Dude, hell yeah, the click's just gone. I drove the TT for a while, and honestly, replacing that axle was a good decision. I'll still be on the lookout for an OEM axle for the added strength, but for the time being, this one works just fine. The car drives better, the axle click is gone, and I trust it just a little bit more. In other words, now that that's out of the way, we're good to move on to something just a little bit more fun. It's been a couple weeks since we talked about custom aero, and for the new viewers, I think it's best to give a recap. A couple months ago, a company named Splitter Gang reached out to us to test a prototype spoiler extension. This completely spiraled into me not only redesigning the spoiler, but completely designing a custom aero kit for the Mark I TT, including matching side skirts, front lip, and spoiler extension. We designed it all out of foam board and custom molded it to the car. My design also made it so you didn't have to drill into the vehicle. The models fit perfect on the car, but they were made out of a different material than what the actual manufactured product would be, so we won't know if we did good until we try the real thing. That brings me to now, where the first piece is already here. I don't want to jinx us or anything, but I'm already pretty impressed. This isn't a paid promotion or anything. In fact, I paid to have these made. This is honestly just a company that I'm promoting because I want to, and I think what they do is really cool and they're good people. They took my model and turned it into these. And I can't even begin to understate just how satisfying it is to get ready to install a car part that I designed. This is, however, the first prototype based on a foam board model, so I'm not at all expecting it to be perfect. The OEM rocker panel mounts to the car in 6 or 8 different places, and my design reuses 4 of them. Earlier today I went out and purchased some extended hardware which I can use to attach the side skirt into these OEM holes. No drilling and no worrying about if the side skirt's lined up properly. My idea is for it to literally be as simple as replacing those OEM screws. This was the first interpretation of my foam board model, and as such, some of the measurements got a little bit askew, but honestly not nearly as bad as I thought. The frontmost and the rearmost holes were absolutely perfect and they bolted right in. The 2 holes in the middle, however, were off by about 1 millimeter, which I'm attributing to it just being a foam board model that they were trying to interpret. More than likely my measurement was off, but it's really easy to correct. All I did was take a drill and drill the hole slightly wider, and with the washers I'm using on the bottom, this really doesn't affect the structural rigidity at all. But it does, however, let the side skirt bolt up just as I imagined. With those 2 modifications made, I was able to bolt the side skirt up for the final time, and I was honestly really impressed with just how sturdy this side skirt is. It's purely a cosmetic mod and it's a pretty simple design, but it's cool that it worked out so well. All that was left to do was to replicate it on the other side, making those same 2 adjustments on the inside holes. We also designed a spoiler extension, since this old eBay one has seen much better days. That piece, however, isn't here yet. I want to give the front lip and the side skirts the best chance they have to look as good as possible, and to do that, I'm going to reinstall the old spoiler extension. Having a front lip, side skirts, and no spoiler extension kinda makes the car look pretty unbalanced, so this is just gonna temporarily go back on, until we get the extension we designed back from Splitter Gang. I will say though, this type of extension definitely ties the car together, and as soon as we get all of the aero test fitted and working, other than a few small things I want to test, this car is pretty much ready to wrap as soon as the weather complies. So what you see right now is what the car is gonna look like, except with a different color, and likely some darker mirrors. If there's anything else you suggest I change before we start wrapping the car, let me know. I'm all ears and I'm very open to suggestions. All there is left to do in today's episode is to take a step back and see if we actually like the look of the side skirts we designed. And in short, I definitely do. I'm pretty blown away by how these side skirts look on the car. Even though they're super simple, there's something really cool about the fact that I designed them, I measured them, and the design actually worked. And I'm absolutely sure that once we get our spoiler extension, which is designed to flow into this design, it's just going to be that same feeling, but tenfold. These are honestly perfect for what I would want for side skirts for a Mark 1 TT. They're understated, subtle, and they follow the lines that already exist on the car and with the front lip. When this car just had the front lip, that lip looked a little bit out of place. I think these side skirts really tie in the front lip to the spoiler extension, and they make the whole car look like it's very intentional. Plus, for my first time measuring and designing a prototype, they fit really well. They are pretty much the exact length and thickness I would want them. They're the same length as the rocker panel, and they don't stick out far enough that you step on them every time you get in and out of the car. Plus, they're built super well too. Huge shout out to Splitter Gang for making my design a reality. Custom aero is a really cool touch for any car, and I think it's really cool that they let you send in your own designs. They did give me a discount code that I'll throw in the description for you guys. It's not an affiliate code or anything like that, so I don't make any money from it. Just there to save you money if you want anything. And if you ask really nicely, they might even be able to make you the aero that I designed for my TT, which would be kinda cool to see on other cars. Either way, thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoyed, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. It's the best way you can help support me and my content. I've got a lot in the works for the channel, so I hope you're excited. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.